Great. My name is Marcelino Alvarez, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Uncorked Studios.
Cool. Thanks for having us barge in here for the day.
Thank you for joining us.
Cool. So, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, these conversations that we're having are about people like you in these positions deciding what to do with other people's lives very often. Do you remember that moment when you woke up and went, "Oh my God, I'm that guy"?
I have a few recollections of a few moments where we realized we've evolved to a certain point as a company, and we weren't a group of 5 people sitting around the same table anymore. I think part of it was one of the first times that I realized that we had gotten to that point was when some of our employees and some of our colleagues just started creating events of their own and doing things on their own and kind of taking initiatives on their own. And realized 2 things. I think one was if we had tried to do the very same thing, it wouldn't have worked because it would have felt like a very top-down kind of management approach. And 2, we realized we were no longer the cool kids. And I think both those moments were both celebratory in a way, like we've reached this milestone where things have a life of their own, and also we're not cool. They kind of came hand in hand. And we had the event in particular that triggered it. One of our colleagues, is a designer, and he wanted to learn how to code. Mm-hmm. And he realized that there just isn't enough time, throughout the day and nights and weekends to kind of pick that up. And so he started a thing called Resistance Training Tuesdays, where it's like, hey, let's hang out 7:30 to 9:30 every Tuesday morning, and whoever wants to show up can teach someone else how to do their craft. Mm-hmm. Had we taken the same exact idea for cross-pollination reasons or whatever we wanted to do, would have never taken off. And this lasted for well over a year. People showed up at 7:30, which is well before our office hours. I mean, we're an agency, we're not a 7:30 a.m. kind of place, and it was great. It picked up a life of its own and just carried on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think about some of the things that you've done along the way and say, gee, I wish we hadn't done that?
I think there's always ways to armchair quarterback a particular decision. And I think early in my career I got out of that mode because I realized that it doesn't scale, and you can literally drive yourself crazy just thinking about all the scenarios that could have happened or couldn't have happened. I think there have been times where we've made really large scale shifts in how we approach our business and the type of work that we do. And early into any of those decisions, there was definitely like either a stumbling moment or a faltering moment where I think we could have looked back and said, maybe we shouldn't have made this move. And not just because of sheer will or stubbornness, but just the collective force of the team. Like we stuck through those decisions and waited for the next kind of point to look back, and more often than not, those have been successful. So for us, we started out just doing mobile application design and development. And a big move was to embrace hardware and realize that apps as an ecosystem, they'll always be around, but it's not a strong differentiator just to build apps. And so we moved into hardware, and they call it hardware for a reason. And we learned a few things, and rather than to kind of say, hey, let's just go back to apps, we said let's keep going on hardware. We had about 12 hardware projects that we did last year. So it's easy to get into that cycle of looking back and saying, I wish I had done something different. And I think more often than not, it's an execution that might be off. And I would caution against judging an entire decision point on just an execution. Look at the execution, see what went wrong, and use that as kind of your basis to figure out what steps you might take on the next one.
So when you gave us the tour around your office, we saw a lot of cool stuff there. So maybe you're slightly the cool kid. There's certainly a lot of cool stuff going on. Just give us a couple of insights into how you've transitioned from being one kind of company to another company, and what that feels like from the inside.
Yeah. So like I said, when we first started, we were doing mobile application design and development, and primarily we worked with ad agencies because that was our history. We came from that background. Mm-hmm. I think things that changed over the last couple of years is, one, the definition of what's mobile has changed. And, when we started out, mobile meant your iPhone, maybe an Android device, and a lot of the work that we did was mobile web design and development. over the subsequent 2 years, we pivoted into doing Android and iOS native development, which in and of itself was a move. There were a lot of shops that were just saying we're only going to do iOS or we're only going to do Android. We said, hey, let's do both because we don't know where it's going to go, and it doesn't seem intelligent to place all your eggs in just one of those platforms. And then, I think as time evolved, we realized that the Android work led to a lot more direct-to-client opportunities. And so we started working less and less with agencies. They still make up a portion of what we do, but realized that when we had the opportunity to be upstream from a strategy standpoint, we could make better products. And so that led us to start, working with clients directly. The hardware thing came along, for a couple of reasons. I think one was a recognition that a lot of the work that we were doing, especially with regards to the Android work, tied into a piece of hardware. And similar to when we were working with agencies alone, if we were just doing an execution, we were missing a tremendous opportunity up front to inform the strategy of what we were building. And so oftentimes you get handed a piece of hardware and you're like, well, here's the 15 buttons and here's what we did, and now build an app that talks to this thing. We're like, well, that's weird. Why did they make this decision? Why did this happen here, here, and here? We should be upstream. We should figure out, at what point can you look at the entire ecosystem and design a solution, whether it's a smart home controller or a medical device or something that talks to everything, and make sure that hardware and software are being designed in parallel. And that seemed kind of like a breakthrough moment for us. I think there's a lot of design firms that are capable of designing for both hardware and software solutions. I think what makes us a little different is that we also have the engineering teams to actually build those products, and so that informs the design process, which informs the strategy. And so if you look at our offering from the very tip of the spear of strategy all the way down through design, whether that's UX, visual, or kind of implementation to development, we have kind of a unique product offering.
And it sounds like having a focus on a strategic relationship with your clients, or at least having that strategic conversation with your clients, really makes all the other stuff less about the technology and mostly about how are you going to take that strategy and turn it into something useful.
Absolutely. Strategy is part of the beginning of design, really. And I think if you look at it just as a deliverable, you miss the transition point into where the insight on why should we be building this thing at a design level, and if you're not part of the design, you miss that at the technology level, which is, well, why did this platform get chosen, or why were these design decisions made? So I think ultimately it just makes us a better product design firm. I think what's unique to us is that we write the code and we build the things that we design.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the physical space here. You've got a lot of different space usages.
Yeah, so for us, when we moved into this neighborhood, so this area of Portland's called Central East Side. It's a lightweight industrial kind of neighborhood. It has kind of a raw kind of warehousey kind of feel. We moved here 3 years ago, and we just had about a quarter of the space of what we have today, and we've expanded a couple times. For us, a couple things that were really amazing and unique about this building. I think one is just kind of the character of this neighborhood. You've got a brewery down the street, you've got sandwich bar across the street, and you've got a nice restaurant downstairs. It's kind of a mix of polish and just kind of like raw Portland grittiness.
You got the train.
And we have a train, which it will inevitably run through this interview. And so that's part of this character of Portland. It's not too polished, it's not too raw, but it's very authentic. And for us, if you look around the office, it's a mix of things that maybe are a nicely designed furniture piece with something that was hand built by one of our employees. So we like this kind of mix and duality of kind of design into something that's
nice
kind
contrast.
Of homegrown. Yeah.
How does that play into the culture?
I think from a cultural perspective, it manifests itself in a couple ways. We have engineers who are also studio people. They like building things with their hands. Whether it's, like I said, furniture, a chair, a table. We have. I think from a visual design perspective, it means that the work that we're doing needs to present itself as kind of an authentic thing. Don't let polish get in the way of the substance of what we're building. So I think for different employees it means different things. I think culturally it means don't lose sight of the function of what it is that we're doing. And design for design's sake or tech for tech's sake is bad. So make sure that there's a purpose behind what we're doing.
How do you think you would describe your style of managing or leading?
It's definitely changed over time. I think early on it was very much trust that everyone will do what they need to do. And I think when you're 5 or 6 people, it's really easy to trust and to not have to be hands-on on certain things, or you can be hands-on without it feeling like you're hands-on because you're all sitting kind of in the same space. We're 22 now. We have another 5 or 6 freelancers and interns, so we're close to 30. That style of management doesn't work. Conversations don't scale, regardless of whatever technology tools you're using to stay in touch. And so, I think for me, it's forced me to kind of look at what my management style is and realize that I've got a core team that I do trust, that are incredibly capable at their jobs. But if we're not having frequent conversations about what it is that we should be doing and why, that doesn't magically clone itself and get distributed to everybody. So I think for me, my management style, it's in flux. To be honest, I'm learning from the size changes that we've gone through. I've changed my one-on-one policy. So I would do one-on-ones with my direct reports. What for me felt like was often enough for every 4 weeks, maybe 5, maybe 6. And now I'm doing weekly one-on-ones, and I've been doing that for about a month. And that was a big change. I was talking to another CEO friend of mine here in town, and he's like, weekly one-on-ones. I just schedule it all the same day. Whereas before I was scheduling my one-on-ones, over a rolling, 6 or 7 day period. So now I do them, 25-minute one-on-ones Thursdays, every Thursday, and they just go. And what's neat about that, and from a schedule perspective, it's you feel like, well, I'm giving up an entire day every week. Like there's other things I could be doing. That's not what actually it feels like on the other side of doing it. Conversations. Because they're all happening the same day, you're aware of incidents and can respond to things in real time, whereas